All right, joined by Cheryl Pounder and Bryan Hayes. Cheryl, before Game 4, we said all the Oilers need to do is focus on getting just one win. Not only did they get their first win, they got their first power play goal, their first shorty, McDavid's first goal, Draisaitl's first points of the Stanley Cup Final. What did they do so differently? And more importantly, Cheryl, can they repeat it in Game 5?
Well, I do believe that they can bring this series back to Edmonton if they continue to do more of what they did in Game 4. But it's the adjustments that they made. I love that they kept that third line intact. Sometimes you start to move pieces around to try and get guys and give guys to your top six. But they didn't do that, knowing that Janmark and Brown, they were relentless on the PK. And I believe that in that first 5 minutes, killing that off was a critical element to the game to make sure that they were pouncing, not sitting back on their heels. I also love that Knobloch said to Leon Draisaitl, listen, we're going to give you a little bit of help here. And the likes of Holloway, who's a big body, he's a great skater, he can get to open ice. You saw it on one of his goals, that forehand, backhand, the distribution of Draisaitl to be able to put it to an area. And then you've got R&H doing R&H things, drawing coverage to him, just that cerebral player to tie it all together. You know, McDavid, you know the game that he had. But for me, it all comes to the back end and how they got those zone exit. An 89% success rate on that exit. And that is absolutely critical. Because when you think of the Edmonton Oilers, there's one thing that they have to play with, and that is speed. And you know that the Florida Panthers want to take it away. So I thought that the minor adjustments that they did make certainly helped with those odd man rushes, which they had 10, and of course, scoring chances off the rush. You look at the minor adjustment, to me, I thought that the puck side, the strong side winger came a little bit lower, and I really like this. So being an option and kind of baiting that pinch. If you're gonna pinch on me, I might make you pay, get it in behind you. Then all of a sudden, they had that weak side winger stretching the zone. So making that ice a lot bigger, saying, listen, we're going to put pucks to the other side of the ice, and we're going to beat you to that puck. And that second guy is going to beat you up ice. And you saw with McDavid getting the bump on the entry. They don't want to play in zone because they don't want to let the Florida Panthers set up, take away those seam passes and set up structure. So they can continue all of that, and it's going to be a difficult task. Listen, there's no question, guys, that the Florida Panthers at home are going to come ready to play. They're certainly going to tighten up, but I do believe if they stay consistent with that depth scoring and that speed, getting out of their own zone, they can bring it back to Edmonton.
Coach Cheryl breaking it down. Look, almost exactly this time last year, Paul Maurice and the Panthers were on the wrong end of a 3-1 situation in the Cup final. Maurice said, and I'm quoting now, in some ways, it's an advantage to be the team down 3-1 in terms of the freedom mentally that you could play with. Hazer, using that sort of logic, would Maurice or anyone possibly think the Oilers actually have the advantage going into Game 5?
Absolutely not, Gino. Of course not. How'd that play out for Paul Maurice last year? Last time I checked, Vegas ended up winning that series, and pretty quickly after that freedom showed up for the Florida Panthers. These are all psychological games that every coach plays, every player is going to play. You have to think that way if you're Edmonton, but no team on earth would prefer to be down 1-3 as opposed to up 3-1 on home ice with the Cup in the building. And sure, Edmonton may be in a scenario where they are closer to playing with freedom, but they're also closer to playing deflated because they understand how high this mountain is and how high they have to climb. So maybe a little bit more freedom, but they're also, I think, a lot more vulnerable where if Florida comes out flying in Game 5 and they get on the board early, all of a sudden check please comes into the mentality of the Edmonton Oilers because they understand how big of a climb this truly is. So I think if Florida comes out flying, which I expect, I think Bobrovsky clearly plays a big role in this. He's been hot and cold throughout his career. He didn't look great in Game 4. If he comes out and looks hot early in Game 5 and making stops, I think that's really going to benefit the Panthers. I think they're going to completely look past the way things played out in Game 4. I think it's completely irrelevant for them based on the way they've played all year and the way they're wired. So no, it may be slightly more free for Edmonton, but they're that much closer to defeat and deflation. This definitely benefits the Panthers being up 3-1.
Following up on Bobrovsky, he's done a great job of bouncing back after a loss in this year's playoffs. But to your point, lest we forget, he had three great rounds last year in the playoffs. But when Bobrovsky suffered his first loss in the Cup final, his game went down the tubes. So it's going to be interesting to see if we see bounce back Bob or bubble burst Bob come Game 5.